This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give them the softest loungewear set, the real gift is this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rebecca Larson. Throughout history, there are tales of love that transcend time, defying societal norms and leaving an indelible mark on the world. The story of Inês de Castro and Katherine Swynford are among the most enduring. Both women lived in eras shaped by political intrigue, rigid hierarchies, and the constant tension between personal desire and public duty. Inês, a noblewoman from Castile, captivated Prince Pedro of Portugal, a love so passionate that it would lead to her murder and inspire a legendary act of devotion after her death. Katherine, a knight's daughter from Hainault, became the mistress and later the wife of John of Gaunt, one of England's most powerful figures. Her life entwined with the fortunes of a dynasty that would shape European history. Though separated by time and geography, the story of these remarkable women reveal how love, loyalty, and resilience can leave a legacy that endures for centuries. Inês de Castro was born in 1325 in the Kingdom of Castile, though little is known about her early life. The details of her birth and childhood are largely lost to history, but she came from a noble family with connections to the court of Castile. Her family status would eventually bring her to the royal court of Portugal, where her life would take a dramatic turn, one that would echo through the centuries. Inês arrived in Portugal in the 1340s, joining the household of Costanza Manuel, the wife of Prince Pedro, the heir to the Portuguese throne. It was here, in the glittering world of the Portuguese court, that Inês's destiny became entwined with that of Pedro. Initially, she was merely a lady-in-waiting, serving Costanza, but her beauty, charm, and intelligence soon caught the eye of the young prince. Despite the fact that Pedro was already married to Costanza, his relationship with Inês blossomed into a passionate love affair. Inês quickly became the love of Pedro's life, and their bond would prove to be the most significant relationship in both their lives. However, their love was not without controversy. Inês was not a Portuguese noblewoman. She was Spanish, and her family's connections to Castile made her a potential political threat to the Portuguese throne. This became a source of tension, especially for Pedro's father, King Afonso IV. In 1355, Costanza died, but rather than helping to resolve the tension surrounding his love for Inês, her death only deepened the prince's attachment to her. The two lovers were now free to openly declare their affection for each other. However, their relationship still faced significant opposition, particularly from the king. Fearing that Inês and her family could wield too much influence over Pedro, King Afonso saw her as a dangerous figure in the court, and he began to make plans to eliminate her. Despite this, Pedro's affection for Inês remained unwavering. They had 4 children together, and in the eyes of Pedro, their love was pure, But the political pressures surrounding their relationship would not allow them to live in peace. In 1355, King Afonso IV took drastic action. In a shocking turn of events, he ordered Inez's murder. She was killed in cold blood by 3 of the king's men, in an act that would forever shape the history of Portugal. The murder of Inês de Castro shocked the court and the nation, and the consequences of her death would ripple through time. For Pedro, the loss of his beloved Inês was unbearable. His grief became legendary. But it was not just his sorrow that made Inez's death famous. It is what Pedro did in the aftermath. After ascending to the throne as King Pedro I in 1357, he sought vengeance on those responsible for her murder. But revenge was not enough for Pedro. He sought to honor Inês in a way that defied all expectations. In an act that would make Inez's name immortal, Pedro had her body exhumed. In 1360, he had Inez's remains brought to the monastery of Alcobaça, where they were laid in state, dressed in royal garments, and crowned as though she were a queen. Pedro declared that Inês was to be treated as his wife, and he ordered that the courtiers who had been complicit in her death should kiss her hand in a symbolic gesture of repentance. This act of devotion sent shockwaves through the kingdom and beyond. It was not just an act of revenge, but a declaration of eternal love. Inês was now a queen in death, a symbol of the love that had transcended the mortal realm. Pedro's love for Inês was so profound that even after her death, it became a defining aspect of his reign. He never married again, and his loyalty to her remained steadfast. The legacy of their love story became part of the folklore of Portugal, celebrated for its intensity, tragedy, and ultimate triumph over the forces that sought to tear them apart. Though Inês's life was tragically short, her story continued to resonate long after her death. She became a symbol of the power of love, loyalty, and vengeance, a woman whose influence extended far beyond the confines of her time. Her story inspired poets, artists, and playwrights, and she has remained a key figure in Portuguese cultural memory. Inês's life and death also had profound political implications. Her children, born out of wedlock, were later legitimized by Pedro and became part of the Portuguese royal family. Her son, the future King Afonso V, would go on to rule Portugal with strength and stability, ensuring the continuation of the line that Inês helped shape. Her story reminds us of the power of love and the deep connections that can form between people, even in the most challenging of circumstances. Inês de Castro's legacy remains a huge part of Portugal's history, a testament to the strength of the human heart and to the tragic consequences that can arise from the intersection of love, power, and politics. While Inês de Castro's story is one of love and tragedy set against the backdrop of medieval Portugal, Katherine Swynford's tale unfolds in the courts of England, revealing a different facet of romance, resilience, and political intrigue. Where Inês's legacy was immortalized through the loss and the dramatic gestures of King Pedro, Katherine's influence was more subtle but no less impactful, rooted in her enduring love for John of Gaunt and the dynastic legacy they forged together. These two remarkable women, though separated by time and geography, share a common thread. Their stories challenge the conventions of their eras, proving that love, whether tragic or triumphant, can alter the course of history. Katherine Swynford was born around 1350, the daughter of a knight from the region of Hainault, which is now part of Belgium. Her father came to England in the service of Queen Philippa of Hainault, the wife of Edward III, and it was through this connection that Katherine and her sister Philippa found places in the royal household. It was there, amidst the glittering yet often turbulent world of medieval courts, that Katherine began her lifelong association with English nobility. As a young woman, Katherine's future was far from secure. We know little about her early years, including the identity of her mother. However, by the time Katherine was in her early teens, she was serving in the household of Blanche of Lancaster, the young wife of John of Gaunt, one of the most powerful men in England and the fourth son of King Edward III. But it was not in the royal court where Katherine's story would take the most dramatic turn. It was in the relationship that would shape her destiny. At the age of 12, Katherine married Sir Hugh Swynford, a knight who worked for John of Gaunt. Their marriage took her to the royal estate of Kettlethorpe Hall in Lincolnshire, a far cry from her lavish palaces and castles of her courtly life. It was a modest home. Yet Katherine quickly adapted to her new role, becoming known as the Lady of Kettlethorpe. This was her first real test in navigating the demands of life outside the court, and Katherine did it with grace and determination, learning to manage the household and raise her children, including a son, Thomas. However, by 1371, Katherine's life would take another dramatic twist. Her husband died while on campaign in France, leaving her a widow. During this time, John of Gaunt had remarried, this time to Constance of Castile, but it wasn't his new wife who would have the most lasting impact on Katherine's life. It was John himself. By 1372, Katherine's life became inextricably linked to that of John of Gaunt. They began an affair, one that would last for over a decade and stir considerable scandal in the English court. John was, after all, married, and Katherine's position as his mistress was highly controversial. It was a time of political tension and social unrest, with the Peasants' Revolt in 1381 just around the corner. Despite the moral outrage, John's relationship with Katherine deepened, and over the course of their affair, they had 4 children, who would later become known as the Beauforts. Their relationship was initially secret, but by 1378, it was no longer a hidden affair. John openly paraded Katherine as his mistress, further fueling the rumors and gossip about her. Chroniclers of the time branded her a witch, a whore, and worse. Yet Katherine remained poised, quietly influential, and ever loyal. It's crucial to understand that while many criticized Katherine's relationship with John, not everyone saw her through the lens of scandal. In fact, Katherine was highly respected by the clergy and even popular in regions like Lincoln, where she spent much of her time. She served as a governess to John's children and worked alongside him to maintain harmony in a complex and often dysfunctional family. Despite the circumstances, she showed remarkable tact, playing a pivotal role in forging connections between the Lancastrians, the Beauforts, and the Chaucers. But their story wasn't without its hardships. In 1381, after the Peasants' Revolt, John's reputation suffered further, and he publicly renounced Katherine. For a time, they were apart. Katherine returned to Lincoln, where she lived quietly, far from the royal intrigue that had once defined her life. But John's affection for her did not fade, and in 1389, when Constance of Castile passed away, John and Katherine were reunited. By 1394, John had obtained a papal dispensation, and the two married in a quiet ceremony in Lincoln Cathedral. Their union was one of love, but also a means to legitimize their children and secure their place in the English aristocracy. John of Gaunt's decision to marry Katherine was a groundbreaking one. It shocked the medieval aristocracy. This marriage sparked outrage among the nobility, who believed Katherine was beneath him in status. Yet, in time, Katherine won their respect. Her tact and intelligence allowed her to navigate court politics, eventually becoming a trusted figure at the royal courts. Her children were legitimized in 1397, elevating them to the status of princes of the blood royal. While they were still excluded from the throne, they would rise to prominence in English society. Katherine's marriage to John of Gaunt ultimately ensured that their descendants would shape the future of England for centuries to come. The Beaufords' legacy can be seen in the ascension of the Tudor dynasty. Katherine's great-granddaughter, Margaret Beaufort, was the mother of Henry VII, who would go on to unite the warring houses of York and Lancaster, ending the Wars of the Roses and founding the Tudor dynasty. Through her, Katherine is an ancestor of every British monarch since Henry VII. Katherine Swynford lived through a tumultuous period. Through the Black Death, the 100 Years' War, and the Peasants' Revolt. She encountered some of the most important figures in medieval England, including Geoffrey Chaucer and theologian John Wycliffe. Despite the many obstacles she faced, she not only survived, but thrived, playing a crucial role in the shaping of the English royal family's future. Katherine passed away in 1403 at the age of around 53. She was buried in Lincoln Cathedral, where her daughter, Joan Beaufort, would later be laid to rest beside her. Though her life was filled with challenges and controversy, Katherine left behind a legacy that is still remembered today. The stories of Katherine Swynford and Inês de Castro reveal the enduring power of love and resilience in the face of societal and political adversity. Katherine's journey from humble beginnings to becoming the matriarch of a royal lineage demonstrates her strength, intelligence, and the ability to navigate a world that often sought to define her by scandal. Inez's tragic romance with Pedro shows how love can transcend even the cruelest actions of violence, immortalizing her as a symbol of devotion and loss. Both women, though separated by time and circumstance, left their marks on history, shaping the royal houses of Europe and inspiring generations with their legacies of passion, courage, and perseverance. Their stories remind us that even in a world ruled by power and politics, the human heart can redefine history. And that concludes another episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you love the show and would like to show your support, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty. Over there, you'll get commercial-free episodes, early access, and some patron-exclusive content as well. If you would prefer to show your support in another way, head on over to my website, tudorsdynasty.com, and click on the shop to see some of the new merchandise that I have available. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.